Welcome back to another Think With Me Thursday here at Effective. Justin with Effective here today. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. I've had some changes happen in my life recently, so that's been some interesting stuff going on. I actually don't have a job right now. I quit my job and I'm on the hunt at the moment. So there's been a lot of interesting shifts going on in my life in that regard. So welcome to the stream today, I guess. It's been a lot of fun stuff, though, too. Today, I'm planning on just going through, hanging out, and going through my Obsidian vault a little bit. I've got a couple notes that I'm going to dive through, some book notes, things of that sort. And then just kind of hanging out. If you have any questions, we can chat through them. If you want to chat about anything in particular that's on your mind, yeah, just let me know. Whatever you want to talk about today. We'll just kind of keep this free form and free flowing a little bit. Welcome, Coder. Thanks for the kind words in chat previously, too. I'm glad that you're able to make some headway against procrastination. It's always difficult. We all run into that. I still run into procrastination, and I've been doing this productivity stuff for a decade now. So it's just part of human life. Yeah. So with that, we're going to get into some Obsidian and be on our way. Feel free to hop in anytime with what you want to chat about, anything you're thinking about. If you haven't been around at all, too, previously, if you haven't seen my Obsidian vault, it's been a while since I've dove into this, but it's not a lot has changed, but a lot has changed in the vault. So I can give you a little bit of a tour of that too. I'm still using some of the numbering system that I've used previously. So I have this 100 inbox. I just put 100 in the front of it so that it pops to the very top of the list. I could use an exclamation point or something like that, but having a number is just a little easier. So this is where all of my new notes get automatically created unless I'm specifically creating them in a specific directory. Then I have these, which I want to keep kind of grouped together. These are my attachments. So any media files that go into my Obsidian vault end up in this folder, so they're in one spot, can get linked easily. Daily notes, and how I have those structured is I have folders per year. So this is the folder where the daily notes get created. And then at the end of the year, I'll move all the daily notes into a year folder inside of this one. And so that just keeps the years kind of nice and cleanly separated, which works out pretty well, I think. And then templates, which is a variety of different things that I use for templates. I've just got a front matter template that sometimes I use. Do an annual review, so I've got a template for that. And some other ones I need to go up and clean up in here that I don't really use all that much anymore. Things that I was experimenting with in the past, but that's really basically it. And then down here, I have some different sections in my vault. What we're going to primarily be looking at today is in the notes section and in the readwise folder here. Journal is exactly what it talks about. It's more journaling thoughts. It's more personal things. So definitely more sensitive information in there. And then reviews is for my annual reviews. If I do a quarterly review, those will go in that folder as well. Workspace is anything that's work-related, meeting notes, ideas that I have about work, things that I'm working on or iterating on. And then the writing folder is where I do some script writing, I do blog post writing, things of that sort. Notes is where the majority of my notes go. So if I have permanent notes or things that I am fleshing out, more ideas versus like a business idea or something I'm going to do, a project. This is more of like a thought idea will go in the notes folder. And then readwise is just where all of my readwise highlights sink in. So in here you can see I've got articles and books and tweets that I have saved into readwise. And so I've got a couple books set up here, but you can see we'll just walk through a little bit more of the structure before we dive into some of the talking or the thinking. This is my dashboard note. This is really the only note that I keep at the root of the vault. Everything either goes in the inbox while I'm working on it, and then either it stays in the inbox until I'm done with it and it moves into this folder, or I just move it into the folder and then make sure I link it in an appropriate place. But then these are kind of the important things for my vault on the dashboard here. Permanent tag is for permanent notes that I have crafted specific thoughts on. Literature notes are the raw thought notes on content that I've consumed. The inbox note are notes that I haven't processed yet, and I use this basically only for Readwise documents that come in or highlights that come in. Any new file created by Readwise when it's syncing will get the inbox tag. So it just is an easy place for me to go if I want to just process through some stuff that I've highlighted at some point in the near future, or in recent history rather. Then I'll just click on that and I'll easily get into that. To do is permanent notes or other notes that need further work. I don't use that one as much as I used to. And then I have a couple different sections on the front page here too, some easy jump off points. I've got this holistic productivity map of content and then developing productivity synthesis. These are just a couple big picture ideas that I've been interested in, and I keep basically jumping into every once in a while to iterate on them and try to pull those thoughts together. And then launch points are maps of content that are relating to these different folders and sections over here. So for my journal, for the writing, and then for notes, I can just show you the notes one real quick here. Again, this is pretty simple. It's just sections of lists, to get into different sections of the vault. I have a couple of different big maps of content here: creativity, future of work, marketing, productivity, all major areas that I have focused on learning. And some of these have more structure than others. So, for example, the productivity map of content is, well, it's a little bit messier than the other ones. If I go into this marketing map of content, you can see there's a lot more structure here, largely because there's a number of different disciplines in marketing that I have been learning, and I'm going in and taking notes on them. So I want to make sure I have a spot to put all the information about advertising, all the information about content marketing, metrics, strategy, things of that sort. Marketing seminar, which was a course that I did this last year. I have all my course notes. As you can see, throughout here, I have 60 different lessons that I took notes on. So it works really well to have it structured like that, because then I can just easily dig into the area that I want to get into. And that's one of the benefits of maps of content, if you haven't seen one of my videos on that. It is helpful to have a map of content if you want to start from a broad picture and figure out kind of the basis of the different elements of that topic area. It's also really good to start if you want to start really detailed in and hone in and then back out from it. It's a pretty flexible way to handle information. So you just got to work with it, put information in there, start off linking articles, other notes that are related to that, and then you'll eventually kind of craft what that map of content looks like. I don't get too crazy with them, but that's kind of how I use those. So now I'm going to move into just doing some notes. I've got a couple books that I want to get through today. We'll see how that goes. So this first one is Oliver Burkeman's book, 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. I got partway through this one, but it's a really great book. I just stopped reading it for whatever reason. I do that sometimes. And the main idea from this book is that a lot of times productivity is geared towards maximizing our time, but in regard to it, it's pretty narrow-minded to think about it that way. There's so many different elements and aspects to life. Excuse me here. Seasons mess with your head sometimes, literally mess with your sinuses. So that's unfortunately what I'm dealing with today. But anyway, I really like the ideas from this book. Oliver Burkeman has a lot of really chilled out productivity philosophy that I like. And I think it's really helpful for a lot of people to take a step back. Productivity culture, as I mentioned, has really encouraged people to just maximize every moment of their day for work. But then we fail to take into consideration the impacts that has on other parts of our life over the long term. We might not see the effects in the short term. When by short term, I mean even within 5 to 10 years on trying to maximize our time. Sometimes we can. But what about 25 years? What about 50 years? If we do that consistently for that long, sure, we might achieve a lot, but what other areas of our lives have we neglected? And so these are things that I have been thinking about. These are things that I think everyone should think about in regards to productivity, and that's why I like this book. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get in and I'm going to do a little bit of progressive summarization and potentially take some notes more succinctly on this if there's ideas that come out of it. Feel free to chime in the chat if you have any questions or comments or things that you're interested in thinking more about, or if you have any questions about Obsidian too. I'm using things, have things set up. Let's see here. Whoa. Just hit it on myself. Nice work. And so kind of what I'm thinking on this note here is just expanding on what Berkman says. It's true. In my mind, I think the productivity world has too narrowly defined the concept of time management, where we've limited that definition to a concept that's really almost exclusive to work. We don't really think about, at least I haven't until recently thought about productivity or time management in terms of managing my time outside of work. I've really only thought about it in terms of, up until the last 3 or 4 years, really only thought about it in terms of like the work tasks. Because, you got a lot of stuff on your plate at work, right? And the challenge with that is you have to manage that. You have to be able to prioritize it. And yeah, there are some consequences naturally baked into being an employee if you don't get your work done. So it makes a lot of sense that we've emphasized time management heavily in the workplace. However, I think a consequence of that has been that we've neglected managing our time in some regards. And when I say we, I just think I see this cultural thing that's happened where we've essentially elevated work above all the other areas of life because it has to do with success, how we make money, things of that sort. And those things are important, but there are other areas of our life that are important too. So what I'm trying to say in this note is that because life is about managing our time well, we have and where we give our time is where we give our value, then we have to broaden the definition of time management to include all areas of the wheel of life. And if you're not familiar with the wheel of life, I'll pop that up here real quick. This is a concept from Zig Ziglar. I've talked about it a number of times on the channel here and in the podcasts that I've done. But it's a way to look at your life and see what needs help and what's doing well. This is a framework that I use in my annual reviews, and when I do quarterly reviews, it's the framework that I use there too. And I literally just write down where I think each one of these is at. I can rate it on a scale from 1 to 10. And then that allows me to see a little bit more clearly what needs emphasis on in kind of the next few months to help build it up. So for example, when I last did my annual review in December last year, the 2 items that were kind of at the bottom for me were the social, and then I add fun in here as well. So I don't directly map to this, but I've kind of created my own categories that align with this. So like social life, relationships outside of my family, and then fun, things to do just for fun. So what I've done as a result of that is I've tried to prioritize in my time that I'm spending things that bring more social aspects to my life, more community to my life, and then more fun too. So that's why if you've been around the streams recently, that I've gotten into mountain biking because I've wanted to do more fun physical activity, which is fun because then it also crosses 2 items off of the wheel of life. Those are the best goals, right? Is when you can improve 2 different areas of your life with one activity. So I can have more fun. I can get physical activity in. And then as I build more relationships with people who are mountain bikers in my area, that can also be a social aspect of things as well. And so that's when you're building habits or you're building new things in your life, those are some ideas to take into consideration. But this is why I love using the wheel of life, because it allows me to back up big picture and start to make decisions about how I use my time so that I can have a more, not balanced. I don't like the term balance because it's not about finding balance in your life. It is true that some seasons of life are a bit more unbalanced, where there's a heavier emphasis on certain areas of your life. For example, if you've just recently had a kid. Your time over the next, 6 months to a year are going to be heavily more emphasized on family aspects of things than they're going to be other areas, because you've got to get used to having a kid. You got to learn how to take care of them. You got to do, and you're going to want to spend time with them, things of that sort. So I'm not saying balance is the right approach here or the right word to use. But what I am saying is maybe to find, I guess, what is the right word? Fulfillment or health? I guess health is probably the right one, because the idea behind the wheel of life is that when one of these areas in your life is flat, meaning it's completely unhealthy, then your whole wheel is flat. So it's not about balance. You're not going to be able to get every single one of these wheels areas to a 10 out of 10 at any one point in your life, but it's keeping them in mind. You can probably keep them somewhat balanced. Like your career might be a 7 and your family might be, an 8, and your physical health might be a 5. Your financial health might be a 6. So they're kind of within range of each other. But what you don't want is to see your career being a 10, your family life being a 2, and your social life being a 1, and your physical health being a 0. Those are extremes that you don't want to get into. So there is an element of balance to it, but it's not about finding balance. We're not looking at work-life balance here. We're not looking at that. It's all about looking at your life as a holistic picture, like Berkman is talking about in the book, and trying to manage the big picture of life, not just so narrowly focusing in on work. That's kind of the gist that I want to get into here. And then 2, I'll just show you quick. All those new notes end up here in the inbox. So that's where that new one showed up. I really like this thought here. The world is bursting with wonder, and yet it's the rare productivity guru who seems to have considered the possibility that the ultimate point of all our frenetic doing might be to experience more of that wonder. I very much agree with that sentiment. There's so much in the world to experience that if we limit ourselves solely to just work and accomplishment and financial gain, that we've missed a lot of life. There's a YouTuber that I've been really enjoying following lately, in mountain biking, actually. BKXC, if you are interested in looking him up. But I love how he approaches things. Most of his videos are just him with a GoPro strapped on, going down some crazy mountain biking trails. But what's so neat about it is that it's out in nature. There's some amazing scenery. It's this fun, almost epic kind of ride that he's going on. And he's just traveling the country doing this, showing people different bike parks and mountain bike trails in different parts of the United States and Canada. And I find it fascinating, but it's so much of that is about experiencing the wonder of the world around us, and it's not just related to nature too, or travel. I mean, there's wonder in relationships. There's wonder in life. There's wonder in owning a home. There's wonder in so many different aspects because there's so much to explore, ideas to learn, and things to experience. Some of it's, sometimes the wonder comes in difficult situations where we dig in and we learn from challenges that we run into, and we press in and we just really grab hold of life in those circumstances. If all we're concerned about is success and making it to the top of the career ladder, or making $1 million a year, or whatever it is that our goal is in defining success in that way, we're probably going to miss a lot of the wonder that life has to bring. There's also, Berkman gets into this in another part of the book where he talks about interruptions. And I mentioned this last week on the stream when I was talking about procrastination. But there are good interruptions and there are bad interruptions. And sometimes we productivity people haven't done a very good job of making those definitions. It's basically all interruptions are bad. Like if you're in deep work, you better be in monk mode where nobody can interrupt you. Otherwise, you're not going to be doing your best work. And I agree with that 80% of the way. But there's always people and things that should be able to interrupt you. If you have a family, your spouse should be able to interrupt you in a place of need, or your kids. I mean, there are good interruptions throughout the day. As I highlighted last week, if your mom calls and just wants to talk and see how well you're doing, that's a good interruption. If, your kid wants to show you a drawing, that's a good interruption. If, your spouse is, has a need and wants and needs some help with something, that can be a good interruption too. So it's thinking about more of the holistic picture of life. And that's where I think Berkman does a great job in this book. He pulls the lens back. He literally goes like this, here's how we are productivity wise in a lot of ways. And he pulls the lens back so you can see the big picture. And I really like that about how he approached this book. Good interruption, Julian. Good interruption. Can't get me to stop saying that. How do I want to put this? Hey, Francesco. Welcome to the stream. Good to see ya. Yeah. Do so. See, you've been hanging out with a bunch of fun people. Yeah, you're awesome, Francesco. Love you too, mate. It's been a lot of fun. If you guys didn't know, Francesco does, he has Keep Productive, the YouTube channel. Definitely subscribe to him if you haven't. He does awesome productivity app reviews. He and I also did a course together called Obsidian Made Simple. And so that's been really fun. I've had it on my list to do an update to that course, but it's been difficult to find time to do it. Hopefully, if I have some more time now that I don't have a job full time, that I'll be able to pull that together a little bit more quickly. Because I know a lot, since we made that course, a lot has changed in Obsidian. The core concepts are the same, but there's a lot of things that I'm plugging you, Francesco. Come on. I know you've got like what, 250,000 subscribers and I've got 11. I can still plug you. It doesn't matter. But anyway, Obsidian Made Simple. Yeah, man. Yeah, I quit my job on Monday. I won't get into details on the reasoning for it, but if you want to know more, maybe we can line up a call or something, Francesco. But yeah, it's been an interesting ride. It's been a real interesting ride. So I've been on the job hunt. I've been trying to figure out, how do I level up what we're doing here at Effective, and just trying to get a game plan together. Yeah, let's do that. Let's chat. Okay, back to the note here, but feel free to interject anyone, anytime with what you're thinking about. Wonder. Take time to evaluate the big picture. Got to get back in the train of thought now. It's funny how a lot of productivity stuff comes back to the human condition. At least it does in my mind. Berkman says here, the problem isn't exactly that these techniques and products don't work. It's that they do work in the sense that you'll get more done, race to more meetings, ferry your kids to more after-school activities, generate more profits for your employer, and yet, paradoxically, you only feel busier, more anxious, and somehow emptier as a result. And the note that I left here was that when we fill empty time with more stuff to do, it only compounds the void we feel inside, longing for fulfillment. Because I think there's an element of that. I've noticed this in my own life as a tendency sometimes, and I've seen it in others as well, where when we're feeling empty inside, when we're feeling like life is unfulfilling, one of the easiest things to do is just like, well, let's just fill it with more stuff, because then that might be more fulfilling. And to try to find fulfillment in a place of success, or in our work, or in something outside of ourselves. And unfortunately, that doesn't really yield what we're looking for. I don't have all the answers for all of this. But I know that a lot of times what we look for fulfillment in, we don't find it where we're looking for it. And it's important to be aware of that, because we need to temper ourselves. And so when we're having a rough season of our lives, it's important to make space to process and feel things, and process through things mentally, logically, emotionally, spiritually, even. But then, it's important to temper ourselves on that side too. Because it's easy to, let me put it this way. It's easy to get lost in our work and get so overly busy, and then miss what really brings value. As he's talking about up above here, wonder, the sense of wonder that we can get, the experience of wonder, learning, or digging into the world around us and all that it has to offer. Stop and smell the roses, I guess, is probably the cliche way to put it. But we often forget to do that. I don't think it's really important. But again, I find it interesting that a lot of my thoughts regarding productivity tend to come back to the human condition. And there's a lot of that too. Like even other productivity thinkers that I've seen, there's a lot of philosophical underpinnings of mindset and how people function and how people sociologically work and how people really interact with the world around them, both ethically and morally, and also healthily. And the ideas around that tend to shape our mindsets toward work, toward productivity. And so just being able to kind of look into that a little bit is fascinating. Because there's even some schools of thought that would say like more knowledge is the end result that we're looking for. And when we have enough knowledge, then the problems of the world go away. And there are other schools of thought that say, no, that's not the case at all. Even with more knowledge and more education and more understanding, there are still elements of problems that exist in the human condition that you can't just think away. And so those things do affect how we approach, learning and working, and even the way that we construct productivity systems and ideas and thought processes, the reasons that we build things. We might not necessarily realize it, but I know like the productivity systems that are big in the world today, that have a lot of notoriety, they're built on a worldview. It's the way it is, but it's it's not necessarily good or bad or here or there, but it's something that I've noticed and I found it fascinating. Book I haven't read yet, A World Without Email. Oh, this is an interesting one here. It turns out when people make enough money to meet their needs, they just find new things to need and new lifestyles to aspire to. They never quite manage to keep up with the Joneses because whenever they're in danger of getting close, they nominate new and better Joneses with whom to try to keep up. As a result, they work harder and harder, and soon busyness becomes an emblem of prestige. I know this is something that I am kind of sick of both saying and hearing other people say. How are you doing? Oh, I'm busy. I really don't like that. And I've been trying to eliminate that word from my life. If my life is full, because I have a lot of stuff going on, then I'll say, well, life's pretty full right now. But busy is not a badge of honor in any regard. It's just not. I'm not a fan of it. I would rather be a person who is not busy by other people's standards, but focusing on what the most important things for my life are. and B, um, to ruthlessly eliminate the things in my life that don't line up with what's most important to me. That's a really hard place to get to. It's an ideal that I'm aiming after, but it's definitely something to think about too. It's so easy to get wrapped up in just all the things coming at us where we don't really take time to think about why we're doing the things that we're doing and if they're really all that valuable. Even in the workplace, it's so easy to just say, oh, okay, someone shoved a task on my plate, and so now I need to do it. And then we drop everything and do that. But did we really give cause to think, is this important? Did we ask questions about it? Or just because this person said, oh, it's really urgent that you do this, like, did we do it? Because in some cases, that is true, but in many cases, it's not. Anyway, a little bit of a tangent there. Key point right here. Key point right here. Highlight it. Day will never arrive when you finally have everything under control. Ouch. I know when I read this one, it kind of hit. And this one just surfaced the other day in my Readwise highlights where it hit in a different way than when I read it, to be honest with you. Because I haven't really taken this to heart as much yet, but realizing, oh yeah, there really is never going to be a spot in my life where I have everything under control. There just won't be. Hands down, will not be a time. Despite me doing everything in my power to try to keep myself and my responsibilities and everything under control, it will not happen. And so reading this, again, has caused me to stop and realize, oh, maybe I need to let go of this ideal in my head of keeping everything in control. So he goes on to say, when the flood of emails has been contained, when your to-do lists have stopped getting longer, when you're meeting all your obligations at work and in your home life, when nobody's angry with you for missing a deadline or dropping a ball, and when the fully optimized person you've become can return at long last to the things life is really supposed to be about. I think we would all agree, probably, that never happens, but sometimes we live. I know I myself sometimes live like I'll be able to get to the end of my to-do list. Like if I just get to this one point where I'll be able to focus on what I really care about. And it's just not true. Even though, we can know something and then we can know something. And the things that we truly know are what drive how we act. And so much of life in my mind has been trying to take things that I know informationally as info and translate it into things that I really know and truly believe. And so this is something that I'm working on trying to do because it's so important. I cannot live life trying to keep everything under control and contain everything, because eventually the dam will break and then I'll feel like a failure. And then, well, too bad. I did like his review of how work has been done in the past. Here, I'll read this real quick. There was no anxious pressure to get everything done. He was talking about in a farmer's life, agricultural times, previous to the Industrial Revolution, working in factories, and especially previously to knowledge work. Either because a farmer's work is infinite, there will be another milking, always be another milking and another harvest forever. So there's no sense in racing towards some hypothetical moment of completion. Fully guilty of wanting to do that. I love completing things in one sitting, but I have to temper that in myself because it's just not sustainable to do that. Historians call this way of living task orientation, which I'm going to link that. because the rhythms of life emerge organically from the tasks themselves rather than from being lined up against an abstract timeline, the approach that has become second nature for us today. So that's task orientation. I think that's a subject that I want to get into a little bit more. I'm just going to create a quick note here. I guess a question in my mind right now is, for the modern knowledge worker, is there a way that life could be more task oriented like this? I don't know. Something worth, I think, looking into. It just seems like task orientation like that may be a healthier rhythm for people. I know one of the other things. Hey, Pinar. Thanks for the comment. I'll get to your question in just a second here. We can maybe explore that just maybe 2 minutes. But thanks for the kind comment about keeping up the great work and that you enjoy the content. I really appreciate that. I have loved making it. I'm glad that you all find it helpful. That's really why I'm here. I love helping people with this stuff. So, but yeah, just 2 seconds and we'll get to that question. Just want to finish this thought really quick here. Get everything done. Yeah. So I'm just honestly wondering, and I'll leave it to do here as well. Is it possible to develop task orientation as a knowledge worker? I don't really know. I think this might be why people gravitate towards the concept of habits so much. I think that's probably it. Yeah. Because we crave schedule. We crave something that's more natural and organic instead of something artificial and forced, like a lot of knowledge work is. So. Okay, so coming back to Pinar's question, we'll bring it up on the screen here. All right, so he's saying, how would you structure your class notes in Obsidian? Say I have maths, biology, and chemistry. Would you create a page for each of these? Yeah, so it really depends on the big picture structure of your vault. If you already have one already, I'll just open and create a new note here where we can kind of flesh this out. If you have let's see, If you have a vault that's already structured in such a way where you have different sections or areas for it, like say for the vault that I have, because I have different sections here. You might using kind of a map of content style note might be a good way to do that. And I can show you what that looks like in just a second. If you don't have a lot of structure in your vaults, one thing you could do is just use folders for that. It just really depends on your personal organization preference. Everybody kind of thinks differently and organizes things differently. You might even use tags if you have a class in a specific year to organize those. How I typically tend to think of this, and you can try this out for yourself and see if it works for you. But I really love how Obsidian allows you to link stuff together. So those notes stay independent, but they're still connected to one another. And this is why the map of content concept really, I think, shines in Obsidian. And so how I would think about structuring class notes in Obsidian would be to do something like this. We'll just call this class notes, MOC content. And just say maybe 21, 22 class notes. So that way you have your class notes organized for the current year, academic year that you're in. And then you can create maps of content for each class. So then I would do algebra example, and I would do biology. And if there's a specific name for the class or a level of the class, like maybe it's like biology 201 or something like that. That way you can group them together. Because if you go too broad topically, you might just have unique names for the years so that you don't pile them all up unless you want to. And then from inside of those, what I would do is I would just start taking notes. So for a class session on a specific topic, say maybe you're studying, I don't know, goodness gracious, I can't even pull basic algebra concepts out of my head, even though I loved math in school, and took lots of high level math in college. Goodness gracious, I haven't used it in a while. Can you tell? You could just say there's one specific concept that you're studying over the course of a week or a month in class. You can create a note for that inside of here. So we'll just say trigonometry. And then we can get into creating that note. And then you can start to take all the notes on that. Or just depending on where you find the natural breakpoints are, that would be a good way to handle that. I'll show you, I touched on this briefly earlier on, but I'll show you how I've structured a course that I was looking at in the past. Maybe you can get some ideas from this. I'll take the question off the screen here real quick. But if I go into my notes section under marketing, I took this course last year called the Marketing Seminar. And how I structured this was I just had a section here called course notes. And for every lesson, I just created a new note. I can find an example here of what that looks like. Okay, so this lesson here called Inverting the First Rule of Fight Club. So this is just the notes from the lesson here. The things that I learned, the things that I found valuable. So things like the unstated rule of Alcoholics Anonymous is that we always talk about AA, and that's why everybody knows about it. It's really interesting. Inverting the first rule of Fight Club. First rule of Fight Club is that you don't talk about Fight Club. It's taking the opposite of that. And then down at the bottom here, there is a prompt. And then this is my response to the prompt. So it's a little different, I know, than coursework that you would get in school or in college. But you might be able to take some of the ideas here. And that's kind of where I was coming at from with the class notes map of content. Have a note as a map of content for every class that you're in. And then inside of that note, start taking notes on subject areas or on specific classes so that you have them all in one spot. The cool thing about maps of content is that they're designed to be reorganized. So you don't have to be too firmly committed to the organizational structure of your map of content, because as you fill it in, it's going to get messy and it's going to be difficult to try to understand, oh, how does this fit together? But then if you take a little bit of time to organize it and look at it and come back to it and use those notes, then it'll be a lot easier to understand how to organize it. You'll be able to see, okay, this stuff belongs in a grouping together, so I can put a heading here. So maybe you could do like your topics. You could also do daily class notes, things of that sort. So your major topics could be big picture areas, and you want to just get the major highlights that you need to do well on the tests there. And you can pull those from your daily class notes. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can structure it. But Bernard, I hope that helps you out. If you have any further questions, do please stick around on the stream. Let me know. Happy to walk through any of that with you. And with that too, if anybody has any other questions about Obsidian or productivity in general, using Todoist or other productivity apps, do pop them in the chat. I'm happy to talk about them. I love that concept. That course was run by Seth Godin, who's one of the big marketing thinkers out there, if you haven't heard of him. And it was really fun to be in that course. And he's got a lot of really interesting quips like that make you think about how you're handling things. And inverting the first rule of Fight Club was a really interesting one. But it's true. Like, marketing is all about getting people to talk about you instead of just talking at them. And so how do you get people to talk about you? You kind of got to build it into the structure of how you approach things. So that I thought was kind of an interesting thing. Anyway, I'm going to clean a little bit of this up here in a little bit, but all right. So like I mentioned earlier, these notes get created in my inbox folder. When I'm done with them, I just move them and I just drop them straight like into the folder where they go, the section that they go. Notes. And then there really isn't a lot of structure under these. So for example, under the notes folder, you can see there are no folders here. It's just all map of content that's defining the structure in that. Readwise has some structure just because that's how they sync over. My journal folder has some structure too. My reviews folder does not. And then workspace doesn't either. I like using, when I'm structuring notes inside of Obsidian, I like using the notes themselves to build that structure versus putting a lot of heavy folder or tagging emphasis on them, because that's the power of linking. Those links really give you a lot of options for structuring your notes. All right. Where were we? This was an interesting thought too of how our idea of time has progressed and has shifted the way that we think about time. And he's saying here, Berkman's saying here, before, time was just the medium in which life unfolded, the stuff that life was made of. Afterward, once time and life have been separated, which kind of happened with the introduction of the clock, in most people's minds, time became a thing you used. And it's this shift that serves as the precondition for all the uniquely modern ways in which we struggle with time today. Once time is a resource to be used, you start to feel pressure, whether from external forces or from yourself, to use it well, and to berate yourself when you feel like you've wasted it. set my shortcut up again here for highlight. Much easier to highlight and press a hotkey. But yeah, once time is a resource to be used, you start to feel pressure, whether from external forces or from yourself, to use it well. I don't know about you, but I know I struggle with this a lot. The prime example of this is time blocking, actually. It's every time I've tried time blocking, it has been challenging to really maintain it. I found it stressful at times. And the reason being is this idea here on the screen. Once you start seeing time as a resource that has to be used well, you start to feel that pressure. And sometimes that pressure can be a lot. So yeah, it's just interesting. And as a result, oftentimes when we put pressure on ourselves to use our time well, that's when the stress level amps up. And that's also when, let's see. That's when we start to get busy, because we don't want to miss time. We don't want to waste time. We don't want to use our time unwisely or anything like that. I find that interesting. What I also find interesting with it, though, going on the subject of time blocking a little bit, is when I've used tools like Sunsama for time blocking, it feels totally different. But say if I've grabbed my notebook, or I've even just done it straight on a Google Calendar, it's weird. Like, time blocking feels really stressful when I do it that way. But when I lay out, okay, these are maybe the like 6 things that I want to get done today, and then just map out when I'm going to do them and try to keep some space in my calendar, then it feels okay in Sunsama. And so, yeah, I'm not quite sure how to approach that, but I do agree with Berkman here that if you just kind of live in the present and not really care about time and being so future oriented like we are in our modern society, a lot of times that brings stress and pressure. Do I have the Johnny's Decimal System set up? No, actually, I don't. I've never really exactly set that up, and I haven't really spent too much time digging into it either. But maybe that's something we can take a look at quick. I gotta get my screen set up here to do that, though. Because this is honestly, like, I've heard people use the Johnny Decimal System before, but I have not used it. I've just kind of grabbed some ideas from other people, but I haven't dug into the specific ideas. So I'm gonna switch sharing my screen here to a different window. All right. When people have forums, I always like to check it out. Love that. Nobody can find anything anymore. It seems to be the quintessential problem of the modern digital age, huh? Nobody can find anything anymore. You get notes and folders and files that scale well beyond what? Like, a few hundred things. It's really difficult to keep track of them all. I've got a video coming out next week on how Readwise has changed my PKM life. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do so to get that one, get notified of that one when it comes next week on Tuesday. But one of the things I talked about in there is how Evernote kind of became the digital junk drawer for everybody, myself included. It's so easy to clip stuff, but then how do you find it again and surface it again and then use it? Nobody can find anything anymore. And that's how I was kind of feeling about that. Readwise kind of changed that for me in a lot of ways, which is pretty. All right, so I'm just interested in learning about this. Divide everything into 10 things. Take everything you need to organize and sort it into at most 10 large buckets. Make sure they're unambiguously different. That seems to be probably the key. And then put a label on each. And those are areas. Then in each area, divide in 10 again. Each bucket, repeat the process, create your categories. In finance, tax returns make sense. And then categories are the key. It's just a collection of stuff, book drafts, travel itineraries, lease agreements, test reports, contracts. Any type of work you do can become a category. Okay. Grouped in 10s. So 10 through 19, first 10 categories. Finance area, 11 tax returns. Okay. And then 42 will not be a finance related category. Then you bring in the numbers. Johnny Decimal looks like this. Short and memorable, spoken out loud. 2 digits, decimal point, 2 more digits. Actually, yeah. It is the first time that I've really taken a second to actually study it. It's not the first time I've heard about it. It's not the first time that I have even looked at this website, but it's the first time that I have taken an intentional moment to actually look at it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess a couple thoughts that I have regarding this. Hold on just a sec. Sorry about that. Okay, couple thoughts on this. This seems to be like really good if you have a set number of areas that you want to handle, or if you kind of defined. Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to have a conversation here. This is what I love about these live streams, is we can actually talk. Okay, so Johnny Decimal seems like it's a really good idea for if you have defined areas and concepts that you need to work with. If you need to develop ideas a little bit more organically, then it might not work as well. But then again, I haven't seen it in practice in that regard, so it might work really well. I am someone who likes to organize things a little bit more organically when it comes to ideas and thoughts. And so using Johnny Decimal in like my Obsidian vault, I don't think will jive very well. However, I could see this working quite well for other kinds of information that are more structured. The way I tend to see information in relation to like life and work and knowledge work is there's really two categories. There's structured information and unstructured information. I'll just pop back out to the camera here for a second. So the structured information is stuff that has a defined home. It's, projects inside of your task manager. It's, the folder structure that you need to have to organize your tax returns and all the tax documents and all the paperless stuff that you have. That's all structured information. It needs to have a structure in order to thrive. But then unstructured information is stuff that thrives in a place where maybe it can bounce around a little bit more. And this is where I think knowledge management and information, like personal knowledge management and using Obsidian for taking notes and being creative and trying to uncover connections between new ideas. While there does need to be some tiny level of organization to make that work, you could just throw it all into the root of your vault with no hierarchy whatsoever and just see what happens. But I think people just generally need a little level of organization to handle things. But to go too deeply in it, I think would be, for me anyway, would be detrimental, because I see Obsidian as that unstructured workspace for dealing with ideas in a creative sense. And so there's that. However, I do see that Johnny Decimal System seems to be really interesting, and I might look at implementing some of that for things outside of what I do inside of Obsidian. So thanks for sharing it today, bring it back up. I'd forgotten about it and wanted to see it again. So I think I'm going to be wrapping up the stream here in just a moment. So if anybody has any other questions or things they want to interject with, do throw them in the chat. I would love to hear from you. Couple housekeeping items before we end the stream here too. One, if you want to kind of stay up to date with what we're doing at Effective outside of the YouTube channel, you can head on over to thinkeffective.co and you can sign up for our free membership over there. It's basically just a newsletter at this point, but you can get access to some free how-to guides and things of that sort too on that site. I am looking at potentially bringing some kind of a paid membership in the future, still trying to sort out the details of what that'll look like. But if you're interested in potentially engaging with something like that, head on over there and sign up today. And if not, that's totally okay too. Love to have you as subscribers here on the channel. And yeah, that's really about it. But I will say that I have thoroughly enjoyed going into Obsidian today with you all and just chatting about different things that I've been learning about, different things that I've been thinking through, books that I've read, and I'm going to continue doing this some more here and there. I've loved doing kind of more of a show format for these Think With Me Thursdays as well, where we can talk about more productivity and PKM related topics in depth, but there's still just something nice about sitting down together and talking through some things that we're thinking about. And with that, again, thanks for joining the stream today. My name's Justin with Effective, and I'll catch you in the next one. Next week? Probably, yeah, next week. My schedule's all over the place these days, but generally do these on Thursdays. Sometimes it's later in the day, like today. Other times it's more around like 1 o'clock Central Time. But yeah, next week on Thursday. But in the meantime, stay effective. Catch you next time. Thanks.